The Vurik had once been proud. They had thrived in the far reaches of the galaxy, building cities on worlds that no human would ever dream of living on, creating ships that could glide through the void faster than light, and learning secrets of the stars that others only whispered about. But pride, they would soon learn, was a dangerous thing. The Council of the Galaxy, a vast organization of species older and more numerous than anyone could count, accused them of treachery. No one seemed to remember the truth of what had happened, only that the Vurik had defied orders and that their actions had cost lives. The punishment was swift and brutal. Worlds were stripped from them, fleets were destroyed, and the Council declared them enemies of the galaxy. They became exiles overnight. Once respected diplomats and warriors, they were now hunted fugitives. Their ships moved silently through the empty blackness, carrying the remnants of their people from one abandoned system to another. Hunger gnawed at them, engines sputtered and broke down, and morale sank with every passing day. Children who had known only the stars now stared at the metal walls of the ship, wondering if they would ever see another sunrise. Elders spoke of home, but home no longer existed. Their leaders argued over decisions, each choice more desperate than the last. Yet no solution could stop the sense of hopelessness that had settled over them. In the command room of the main ship, the Council of Vurik leaders met. Their leader, Karen Thal, a tall figure with silvered scales and deep amber eyes, watched the stars slip by. Her voice, steady but low, carried the weight of a species that had lost everything. "Every world has turned us away," she said, her tone sharp but weary. "We have no allies, no safe havens. Even the outer colonies refuse us. We are ghosts in the universe, and soon if we do nothing, even ghosts will fade." Her words were met with silence. The Council had expected many things: surrender, rage, maybe even tears. But the emptiness in Karen's statement made everyone uneasy. To give up now would be to accept death, and the Vurik had never been a species to surrender. Still, hope seemed like a dangerous luxury. For months they had sent messages into the void. Every attempt to communicate with other civilizations ended the same way. Some ignored them, some threatened them, and some even opened fire when the Vurik approached too closely. Their reputation as outcasts had preceded them, and few were willing to risk their own safety for those the galaxy had condemned. It was as if the stars themselves had decided the Vurik did not belong. One day, the youngest member of Karen's council, a soft-spoken historian named Liren, suggested an idea that made everyone pause. "What about Earth?" he asked. "The humans. I have read about them. They are young, untested, and dangerous according to some accounts, but they are not part of the Concord. Maybe they would help us." The room went silent again, and Karen's eyes narrowed. Humans were not well known in their corner of the galaxy. They were considered brash and unpredictable. Many civilizations had avoided contact with them, calling them dangerous or primitive. The Vurik had never dealt with humans before. Karen leaned back, thinking, trying to weigh the risks. "If we send a message there," she said finally, "we risk being destroyed immediately. The humans may see us as a threat, but we have nothing to lose, nothing left to fear. Prepare the signal." The crew worked tirelessly for hours, crafting a message that could reach Earth's communication systems. It was not a plea filled with desperation, though it carried that undercurrent. It was precise, clear, and honest. The Vurik had been cast out. They were hunted. They sought refuge. It was not a demand. It was a statement of fact, a simple request for mercy. Once the message was ready, it was sent out across the empty blackness. For days, the crew watched the signal disappear into the stars, moving faster than anything they had ever sent before, hoping it would reach someone, anyone, who could respond. They waited. They argued. They hoped. The silence of space pressed against them, a constant reminder that they were alone. Then unexpectedly a response came. Not from the conquered, not from some distant empire, but from Earth itself. The message was brief and unassuming, yet it carried a warmth that surprised the Vurik. "You are not alone. Come to Earth, we will help." There was a moment of disbelief. The council looked at one another, unsure if the message was real or a trick. Karen studied the signal, checking the source, verifying the authenticity. It was real. Earth, a planet so young and small in the vast galaxy, was offering sanctuary. The Vurik had never known hope like this. Hope had always been fleeting, a fragile thing crushed by the weight of survival. But now, For the first time in months, they felt something stir deep in their hearts. They would have a chance to live. Not just survive, but live. Preparations began immediately. Though many of their ships were damaged or barely functional, the Vurek worked together with renewed energy. Engineers patched the hulls, recalibrated engines, and stocked supplies. Children and elders alike were given tasks suited to their strengths. For the first time in weeks, laughter echoed through the corridors, small and tentative but genuine. The journey to Earth was not easy. Their ships limped across light years, sometimes barely escaping storms of asteroids or gravitational pulls from dying stars. Every day was a struggle, every night filled with uncertainty. But with each passing hour, the Vurek grew stronger, more determined. They had a destination, a goal, and that made all the difference. Karen often walked among the people, offering words of encouragement, but also listening. The Vurek shared stories of home, of cities that had floated above oceans of molten metal, of forests that glowed in the night, of art and music that captured the essence of their people. They shared their fears too, the nightmares of exile and the sorrow of losing everything. But through it all, the thought of Earth remained a constant beacon. As Earth grew closer on their sensors, excitement mixed with fear. They had never seen the planet up close. Every description they had read, every message they had intercepted painted a picture of beauty and danger. Yet they could see it now, a blue and green sphere suspended in the blackness. Oceans shimmered in sunlight, clouds swirled in patterns that seemed alive, and continents stretched out full of promise. The first human response team waited in orbit. Small ships and satellites moved to intercept the Vurek vessels. Communication channels were open, filled with voices that were unlike any the Vurek had heard before. Warm, curious, and calm. There was no aggression, no fear, only a sense of readiness and welcome. When the Vurek finally docked at the human space station, the moment was surreal. Karen led her people, stepping out of the ship with careful, deliberate movements. The humans that met them were dressed simply, without armor or weapons, offering hands of friendship. Karen hesitated, looking at her crew. She saw fear, exhaustion, and relief mirrored in their eyes. Then she took a deep breath and stepped forward, reaching out in trust. The humans guided them to the station, offering food, warmth, and medical care. The Vurek had never experienced hospitality like this. It was simple, human, but profound. They were not just safe. They were seen, acknowledged, welcomed. Children clung to human caretakers. Elders shared stories with them. And Karen found herself speaking with a human diplomat who listened without judgment, who understood without needing explanation. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the Vurek allowed themselves to relax. They were not just survivors anymore. They were guests, and in that small, fragile truth lay a power greater than any ship, any weapon, or any technology. Hope was alive, and with it the possibility of a new beginning. The journey from exile to Earth was just the beginning. But for Karen and her people, it marked a turning point. They had been cast out by the galaxy, condemned and hunted. Yet here was a planet willing to offer shelter. A planet full of people who, despite being young and untested in the ways of the stars, had shown compassion where others had shown cruelty. As the Vurek settled into their new reality, Karen looked out of the station window at the blue-green world below. The first days on Earth were unlike anything the Vurek had ever experienced. For a species used to floating cities and sprawling alien landscapes, Earth felt both small and vibrant. The air smelled different. The light moved in ways they were not used to, and the weather changed so quickly it was almost unpredictable. Still, the humans made every effort to make them feel at home. They offered rooms to sleep in, food prepared in ways that smelled strange but comforting, and warm clothing to replace the thin suits the Vurek had worn in space. Children were the first to adapt. They wandered through the human stations and training areas with wide eyes, touching things they had never seen before: soft blankets, round objects that bounced unpredictably, and screens that showed moving pictures of the Earth's surface. Humans laughed at the way the Vurek tilted their heads in confusion, but they did not mock them. Instead, they guided the young Vurek patiently, teaching them how to use small tools and move safely in the new environment. Laughter, a sound the Vurek had almost forgotten, returned to the halls of the station. Adults were more cautious, Many of the Vurek had spent their lives in positions of authority, making decisions that affected entire colonies. Now they had to learn humility. They watched humans work, curious about the strange species that had grown so quickly on a harsh and seemingly fragile world. Humans had no starships, no fleets, and yet they had survived countless threats: famine, wars, diseases, and environmental disasters. There was strength in their simplicity, a resilience that the Vurek had rarely seen elsewhere. Karen Thal walked among her people, noticing both their awe and their doubt. She could see the fear that lingered behind their wide eyes. "Do not be afraid," she told them softly. "This world is unlike ours, but these humans mean to help. Trust them. If we are to survive, we must learn from them as much as we hope they learn from us." Her words offered comfort, though she herself could not shake a sense of unease. The galaxy had banished them, and any small mistake here could mean disaster. Humans, for their part, were equally fascinated. They asked countless questions about the Vurek, their culture, and their history. They marveled at the Vurek's technology, their knowledge of energy systems, and the strange ways their bodies adapted to different environments. Humans had read about aliens in stories, but meeting them was something entirely different. The Vurek were alive, breathing, thinking beings, not fictional creatures or abstract concepts. One human scientist led a tour of the Earth station, showing the Vurek how the planet had survived centuries of human conflict. "We are far from perfect," the scientist said, voice calm but earnest. "We have made mistakes, many mistakes, but we keep trying. That is how we survive." The Vurek listened, impressed by the humility and honesty in the words. On their homeworlds, leaders rarely admitted failure. Humans, however, seemed to find strength in acknowledging it. Life on Earth was not without challenges. The Vurek had to learn how to eat human food, which was sometimes bland, sometimes spicy, and always different from the nutrient-rich sustenance they had grown up with. Some of the younger Vurek found it amusing to chew the strange textures, while others refused to eat at first, suspicious of anything unfamiliar. The humans laughed gently, showing patience and offering choices until the Vurek accepted their help. Movement on Earth was also challenging. Gravity was lighter than some of the worlds they had known, but heavier than others. Walking, running, even simple climbing required coordination they had not needed before. Humans demonstrated exercises to strengthen muscles and balance, and the Vurek, though clumsy at first, gradually began to adapt. Slowly, the station became a place of learning, experimentation, and cautious joy. As the days passed, small friendships began to form. A young human engineer took a particular interest in one of the Vurek children, showing them how to operate a simple robot that cleaned the station's floors. The child's laughter filled the room when the robot clumsily bumped into walls, and the engineer laughed with them, celebrating each small victory. Among the adults, Karen spent hours talking to a human diplomat, sharing stories of Vurek history and listening to tales of Earth's struggles. In these conversations, Karen discovered something she had not expected. The humans were curious, yes, but they were also patient listeners. They did not interrupt, judge, or dismiss. They simply absorbed the stories, learning from them. Evenings brought moments of quiet reflection. The Vurek gathered in small groups, staring out at Earth through large observation windows. They watched storms sweep across oceans, mountains rise from valleys, and cities glow with lights that seemed to mirror the stars they had left behind. "It is beautiful," one elder said, voice low and reverent. "Not like the worlds we knew, but alive in its own way." Karen nodded, feeling the truth in the words. Earth was not perfect, but it was alive, and that liveliness gave them hope. Humans also shared their customs, teaching the Vurek simple games, music, and art. The Vurek were fascinated by the idea that beauty could exist simply for enjoyment, without practical purpose. They painted, sang, and created for the first time in years, rediscovering a joy that had been buried beneath fear and survival. Laughter became a daily sound, and the Vurek began to forget the constant weight of exile, if only for a few hours each day. Despite these moments of comfort, tension lingered. Some Vurek were wary, afraid that the humans would betray them or that the Council of the Galaxy might find them and force them to leave. Karen understood these fears and addressed them openly. "We have been hunted," she reminded them gently. "We have faced betrayal before, but humans are different. We have a chance here to rebuild, to learn trust again. Do not waste it with doubt. Use it to grow. The bond between humans and Vurek deepened through daily cooperation. Humans repaired and upgraded the Vurek ships, while the Vurek shared knowledge of energy systems and medicine. Together, they worked on projects that could benefit both species: renewable energy devices, medical treatments, and education programs for the young. The collaboration was not perfect. There were disagreements, misunderstandings, and occasional frustration, but the shared goal of survival and growth kept them moving forward. The Vurek were surprised by the humans' adaptability. On their homeworlds, technology often dictated life. Here, humans adapted to circumstances rather than expecting the world to adapt to them. If a machine failed, they found another solution. If resources ran low, they shared and improvised. The Vurek began to admire this resilience, realizing that strength was not always in power or knowledge, but in the ability to persist, to adapt, and to care for one another. One day, a young Vurek child asked Karen why humans seemed so willing to help strangers. Karen paused, unsure how to answer at first. "I think," she said slowly, "that humans see value in life itself. They do not measure worth by power, wealth, or status. They measure it by the choices we make, by the compassion we show. That is why they help us, because they see us as beings who matter." The child nodded, as if understanding, and returned to play, carrying a small human-made toy that beeped and spun in their hands. Even as trust grew, Karen remained cautious. The galaxy had not forgotten the Vurek, and they could not assume safety would last forever. But for now, the days were filled with learning, laughter, and cooperation. The Vurek began to understand what it meant to live among humans, to share, to teach, to learn, and to find joy in small, everyday moments. As weeks turned into months, the Vurek's presence became a normal part of the station. Humans adapted to their alien friends, adjusting schedules, routines, and even meals to accommodate them. Joint exercises, educational sessions, and cultural exchanges became daily activities. The initial awe faded into familiarity, and with it came a deeper understanding of what it meant to be part of a community. Even across species, Karen often stood quietly watching the humans and Vurek interact. She had led her people through countless battles, navigated political intrigue, and survived exile, but nothing had prepared her for this: the simple power of human kindness, patience, and courage. She realized that if her people could learn from humans, perhaps they could rebuild not only their civilization, but also a sense of purpose and belonging. For the first time, the Vurek dared to hope, not just for survival, but for a life where they could thrive, contribute, and be seen as equals rather than outcasts. Earth had offered them a home, and the Vurek were determined not to squander it. They would learn, they would grow, and they would repay the trust that had been placed in them. And so, in the quiet of the station, under the glow of Earth's oceans and skies, the Vurek began to feel something. Life on Earth had begun to settle into a rhythm, but it was far from ordinary. The Vurek, once wandering exiles, were slowly discovering that survival was not enough. They wanted purpose. Humans had offered them safety, but Karenthal knew that comfort alone could not rebuild a people who had lost everything. The Vurek needed work, challenges, and responsibilities. They needed to contribute, not just exist. The first project came unexpectedly. A small team of humans had been experimenting with renewable energy devices, trying to harness the wind and sun more efficiently. They welcomed the Vurek engineers to help, curious about how alien technology could improve their designs. The collaboration was awkward at first. The Vurek had never worked with such simple tools, and humans had never handled advanced energy systems before. There were arguments, miscalculations, and occasional frustration. Yet slowly, they began to complement each other. Vurek knowledge of energy efficiency paired with human ingenuity produced devices that neither species could have created alone. Karen watched the team's work and felt a mixture of pride and relief. Her people, who had once only known survival and strategy, were now learning cooperation, patience, and creativity in new ways. One young Vurek, fascinated by the spinning blades of a wind turbine, asked a human engineer why humans worked so hard despite the failures. The engineer smiled, wiping sweat from their brow. "Because failing teaches us more than succeeding, and every time we try we get a little closer to something better." The child's eyes widened, And for the first time, Karen realized that Earth could teach more than just safety. It could teach wisdom. Meanwhile, the human population observed the Vurek closely. People were curious about the alien visitors, and news of the refugees spread quickly. There were debates, discussions, and questions about whether humans should continue helping the Vurek. Some feared the unknown, worried that the galaxy might come looking for the exiles. Others argued that the Vurek were not just refugees, they were teachers, allies, and perhaps even friends. In quiet towns and busy cities, ordinary people began to volunteer, bringing supplies, offering skills, and simply welcoming the Vurek into their daily lives. The cultural exchange went both ways. The Vurek introduced humans to simple practices from their own worlds. They shared meditation techniques that focused on breathing and awareness, helping humans manage stress and fear. They taught lessons in astronomy, showing human children how to navigate by the stars and how planets moved in complex orbits. Humans taught the Vurek to cook using ingredients they had never encountered, creating new flavors and meals. At first, some of the Vurek complained food was bland, too spicy or strange, but gradually they embraced the novelty, laughing as they experimented. One evening, Karen led a group of elders to watch a sunset over the ocean. It was not the glowing metal cities of their home worlds nor the crystal forests under twin suns. They had never seen anything like it. Waves rolled endlessly, clouds glowed pink and orange, and the horizon stretched so far it seemed infinite. One elder who had been silent for days whispered, "This is what we have been missing. Life in its simplest form, and yet it feels so powerful." Karen nodded, feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and hope. Earth had become more than a refuge, it was a teacher, a sanctuary, and a promise of a future. As the Vurek began to settle, tensions from the galaxy started to make themselves known. Messages from the conquered had been growing more frequent. They demanded that Earth surrender the Vurek immediately, claiming that harboring fugitives was an act of defiance. Some humans panicked at the thought of confrontation, worried about the consequences of opposing a galactic power. Governments debated quietly, seeking diplomatic solutions while preparing for the worst. Karen understood the danger. The conquered had destroyed worlds and fleets before, and Earth, despite its strength, had no experience with such power. Yet she also knew that fear could not dictate their future. To prepare for possible conflict, Karen proposed a joint training program. Humans and Vurek worked together to understand each other's capabilities. Humans taught strategy, combat techniques adapted for Earth's gravity, and emergency protocols. The Vurek shared knowledge of spacecraft, energy-based defenses, and long-range communication. It was a delicate balance. No one wanted to escalate tensions unnecessarily, but preparedness was essential. The exercises fostered trust between the two species. Humans began to understand the Vurek's discipline and experience, while the Vurek saw the ingenuity, resilience, and courage of the humans. During this time, the bond between the species deepened in smaller, quieter ways as well. Human children walked hand in hand with Vurek youth through stations and labs. Humans helped repair Vurek vessels damaged from their long journey, while the Vurek taught humans how to maintain systems in ways they had never imagined. Music, art, and storytelling became part of the daily schedule. The Vurek told epic tales of their civilizations, of victories and losses, of love and loyalty, capturing the humans' attention. Humans shared novels, movies, and songs, introducing the Vurek to emotions expressed in new and often humorous ways. Laughter, once foreign, became a shared language between the two species. Karen often observed these moments, feeling a sense of wonder she had not experienced since before exile. Her people were learning to see value in life itself, not just survival. They were learning to appreciate beauty, friendship, and trust. She understood that the galaxy might never forgive them, and that the Concord could still send forces to claim them. But here on Earth, they had discovered something that mattered more: the ability to live fully, even after loss. Yet not everything was smooth. Some Vurek struggled with Earth's limitations. The humans' technology, while innovative, was primitive compared to what the Vurek had once known. Some elders complained that their people were being slowed down, forced to relearn basic skills. Children missed the freedom of open skies and gravityless play. Arguments occasionally erupted between humans and Vurek, though they were quickly resolved by Karen or other leaders mediating with patience. These challenges, rather than breaking bonds, often strengthened them. Both species learned that cooperation required compromise, and compromise required empathy. One memorable day, a group of human engineers took the Vurek to a nearby city to observe urban life. The Vurek were astonished by the complexity and energy of Earth's cities. The crowded streets, the movement of vehicles, the lights, and the sounds. It was chaotic and imperfect, but alive in a way their ordered worlds had never been. The Vurek learned to navigate traffic, to use public systems, and to communicate with humans outside the stations. At first they moved cautiously, observing every detail. Slowly they began to adapt, laughing when they made mistakes and marveling at the humans' patience. During these excursions, the Vurek also began to understand human emotions more deeply. They noticed fear, joy, sadness, and pride expressed openly. Humans argued passionately but forgave quickly. They celebrated accomplishments with small gestures that the Vurek had never seen on their home worlds. Smiles, claps, shared meals. These gestures, simple as they were, taught the Vurek something profound. Survival was not just about avoiding danger, but about building connections, supporting one another, and finding joy even in hardship. Karen encouraged reflection among her people. She held meetings in which Vurek could speak freely about their experiences on Earth. They shared fears, hopes, and lessons learned. They also spoke of plans, how they might use their skills to help Earth, to contribute meaningfully, and to honor the trust humans had placed in them. It was a turning point. For the first time, the Vurek were not just refugees. They were participants in a shared future, co-creators of a new society. As months passed, the Vurek began to make small but meaningful contributions. They helped repair and improve infrastructure, shared medical knowledge to help treat diseases, and advised on environmental projects. The humans listened attentively, sometimes skeptical, but always willing to test new ideas. Together, they achieved progress that neither could have managed alone. Every success, no matter how small, reinforced trust and deepened the bond between the species. Karen realized that Earth offered more than survival. It offered a chance to redefine identity, to discover strength beyond technology or power. The Vurek had been cast out by the galaxy, but on Earth, they were being welcomed not just for what they could do, but for who they were. That realization filled Karen with a renewed sense of purpose. She began planning long-term strategies, education for the Vurek young, cultural exchanges, and joint projects that would ensure the species not only survived but thrived. Even at night, when the station was quiet and humans slept, Karen would stand at the observation windows looking at the glowing planet below. The Vurek had traveled light years, faced death, and survived exile. Now, for the first time in decades, there was a sense of possibility, a fragile, shining possibility. They had found refuge, yes, but more than that, they had found a chance to belong. And so, as the days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, the Vurek Months had passed since the Vurek had arrived on Earth and life had grown calmer, but Karen Thal knew that peace was fragile. Messages from the Concord had grown more frequent and sharper. The galaxy had not forgotten them, and while Earth offered sanctuary, it could not hide them forever. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Karen called a council meeting. The room was quiet, the kind of silence that carried tension like a heavy cloak. "The Concord is not patient," Karen said, her voice steady, but heavy with concern. "Their messages are clear. They want us returned. If we are not surrendered, they will come for us. We must prepare." She scanned the faces of her council, seeing a mixture of fear, determination, and trust. "We have survived exile. We have thrived here. Now we must protect what we have gained, not just for ourselves, but for those who have welcomed us." The humans were just as aware of the growing threat. Earth's leaders convened emergency meetings, military strategists reviewing defense plans, engineers calculating energy shields and orbital defenses, and scientists predicting possible attack routes. The humans had never faced an enemy from beyond their solar system, but their adaptability, ingenuity, and courage had carried them through disasters on their own planet. Now they would have to extend that resourcefulness to the stars. The first joint exercises began the next day. Humans and Vurek trained side by side, learning to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. Humans taught Earth-based strategies, leveraging terrain, weather, and mobility in ways the Vurek had never needed to consider. The Vurek shared knowledge of spacecraft, energy-based defenses, and long-range combat tactics. Together, they began to build a network of early warning systems, combining human technology with Vurek sensors to detect threats long before they arrived. Children watched from safe observation zones, curious and fascinated. The younger Vurek were eager to help, studying human engineering manuals and practicing communication systems. Humans, in turn, began to understand how valuable their new allies could be. The exercises were rigorous, demanding, and sometimes exhausting, but they instilled confidence. Both species learned that survival was not just about strength. It was about cooperation, trust, and innovation. Weeks passed, and Karen's team grew more confident. Still, she knew the Concord's forces were vast and experienced. They would not underestimate humans, but they also would not show mercy. Karen's mind never rested. Every day she walked among her people, ensuring morale stayed high. "Do not let fear control you," she reminded them. "We have survived worse than this. Here we have allies, friends. We are not alone. That is our strength." Then the first warning arrived. Sensors in orbit detected a fleet moving at extreme speed from the edge of the system. The Concord had sent a patrol, likely the first wave of enforcement. The humans and Vurek worked together to track the fleet, calculate possible trajectories, and predict arrival times. The tension in the station was palpable. Every alert, every beep of a console made hearts race. Karen moved calmly, but inside she felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. The Concorde fleet arrived sooner than expected, its massive ships blotting out stars like dark islands. Human and Vurek crews rushed to defensive positions, energy shields humming to life, communication channels buzzing with commands and updates. Karen took her place in the control room, watching the fleet grow larger and more imposing on the screens. She felt fear, yes, but also determination. She had survived exile. She had witnessed her people thrive on Earth. Now they would fight, not for conquest, but for survival, for friendship, and for the chance to live freely. The first confrontation was tense. The Concorde sent a warning shot, a beam of energy that scorched the surface of the ocean near the station. Humans and Vurek had prepared for this, and countermeasures activated immediately. Shields flared, deflecting the energy, while defensive drones and energy pulses fired toward the approaching fleet. The battle was a dance of strategy, speed, and precision. Every human operator, every Vurek pilot, relied on trust, coordination, and training to survive. Karen remained in the control center, issuing calm commands, her amber eyes scanning the displays for weaknesses in the enemy formation. Humans followed her lead, adjusting tactics mid-fight, improvising where the Vurek calculations fell short. It was chaotic, exhausting, and terrifying, but it worked. They managed to push the first wave back, forcing the Concorde patrol to retreat temporarily. After the skirmish, there was a moment of quiet. Relief mixed with exhaustion as crews checked damage, tended to injuries, and recalibrated systems. Karen walked among the human and Vurek teams, offering words of encouragement. "This is only the beginning," she reminded them. "We have shown that together we can face the galaxy's strongest. But we must continue to prepare. Strength is built in every moment, not just in battle." The humans learned quickly from the Vurek tactics. They adapted to energy shields, learned to anticipate attacks based on alien calculations, and even modified their own weapons for faster response. The Vurek, in turn, discovered that humans could improvise in ways their structured minds could not. In one drill, when a simulated attack did not go as planned, a human engineer found a solution in minutes that would have taken the Vurek days. Karen observed this quietly, realizing that Earth had not only given her people a home but had strengthened them in ways exile never could. Despite the progress, fear lingered. Every day the Concorde fleet could return, larger and more determined. The Vurek children asked questions about war and death, and Karen answered honestly but gently, explaining that preparation and unity were the best weapons. She encouraged them to focus on learning, on creativity, and on the skills they could master. Fear, she taught them, could be controlled and transformed into purpose. The first serious confrontation came weeks later. The Concorde fleet returned, this time with more ships, larger and faster than before. They did not give warnings, they attacked immediately. The human and Vurek crews were ready. Energy shields activated across orbital platforms and ships moved into formation. The battle was intense, with beams of light cutting through the dark of space, explosions flaring against the backdrop of stars. Karen coordinated attacks with precision, relying on both human intuition and Vurek calculations. Pilots on both sides moved with focus and trust, following patterns they had practiced for months. Humans handled ground defense stations tracking incoming fighters, while Vurek pilots engaged enemy ships, using advanced maneuvers the humans could never have imagined. Together, they formed a defense that was stronger than either could have managed alone. In the middle of the battle, a human commander noticed a weakness in one of the Concorde ships, a flaw in its energy shields. They relayed the information to Karen, who calculated a precise attack sequence. Vurek pilots followed her commands, and a coordinated strike disabled the ship, forcing it to retreat. The humans cheered quietly, amazed at the collaboration and trust that had made the victory possible. The battle continued for hours. Energy beams, missiles, and maneuvering crafts filled space, but the humans and Vurek did not falter. They had learned to trust each other completely. Even when a Vurek ship was damaged, human engineers guided it back to safety, repairing hulls mid-battle. When human systems malfunctioned, Vurek technicians improvised repairs using alien techniques. Every moment of cooperation reinforced the bond between the two species. By the time the Concorde fleet withdrew, both humans and Vurek were exhausted, but victorious. The station had suffered damage, but lives had been saved, and Earth had defended the Vurek successfully. For the first time, the galaxy saw humans and their alien allies not as weak or divided, but as a force to be reckoned with. In the aftermath, Karen addressed both humans and Vurek. "We have survived together," she said. "We have shown that unity, trust, and courage can overcome even the greatest threats. This is not the end. The conquered will return and other dangers may come, but today we have proven that together we are stronger than fear, stronger than exile, and stronger than any enemy." Her words were met with applause, cheers, and quiet smiles. The Vurek had found courage again, and the humans had discovered strength they had never imagined. The battle changed everything. Humans began to see the Vurek not just as guests, but as partners. Vurek people understood that Earth was more than a refuge. It was a home worth defending, a place where survival was tied to trust, creativity, and friendship. Both species had learned that the galaxy could be hostile, but unity could turn fear into power. As Karen looked out over the planet below, she felt a deep sense of pride and hope. The conquered might still be a threat, but Earth and her people had proven something remarkable, that even the outcasts of the galaxy could find strength, purpose, and allies when they learned to trust and fight together. The Vurek had arrived on Earth as exiles, uncertain and fragile. They had learned to live, adapt, and cooperate. Now, after their first real test in battle, they had learned the Concord's messages had grown urgent and insistent. They demanded the immediate surrender of the Vurek, warning that further resistance would be met with force. Karen Thal knew that the galaxy's wrath could not be ignored. Earth had given her people sanctuary, but the planet could not face an interstellar power without preparation. It was clear that this time diplomacy would have to be paired with courage. Karen convened her council, her amber eyes scanning the faces of her people. "The conquered will come again," she said. "They will expect obedience. We must show them that we are not weak, but we must also show that we do not seek war without reason. We have learned from humans that strength is not only in power, it is in wisdom, compassion, and unity." The Vurek nodded silently. They trusted Karen, as they always had, and they knew she would guide them through the storm. Humans worked tirelessly alongside the Vurek to prepare for the incoming Concorde fleet. Engineers calculated shield frequencies, pilots practiced coordinated maneuvers, and scientists studied every possible tactic to protect Earth. Yet, Karen insisted that preparation alone was not enough. "We must also communicate," she said. "We must show the galaxy that Earth and its allies are not a threat, but that we will not be bullied. Diplomacy must come first. Strength will back our words, not lead them." A message was carefully crafted, a joint statement from Earth and the Vurek. It spoke of unity, resilience, and a desire for peace. It reminded the Concorde that the Vurek were refugees, not criminals, and that humanity had always valued fairness and compassion. It was not a threat, but it was firm. It stated clearly that any aggression would be met with coordinated defense, combining human strategy and Vurek technology. The Concord's reply came faster than expected. Their tone was cold, dismissive, and uncompromising. They demanded surrender, insisting that Earth's interference would not be tolerated. Karen studied the message and then turned to the humans. "They do not understand us," she said quietly. "They have never met a species like yours. They will see our strength, but they must also see our hearts." Diplomacy was paired with preparation. Humans and Vurek worked together to improve defenses, fortify orbital stations, and create communication networks that could withstand interference. Training intensified, with both species learning from each other. Humans taught Earth tactics using terrain and ingenuity to outsmart potential attackers. The Vurek shared strategies for ship formations, energy shields, and long-range sensors. By the time the Concorde fleet arrived, the Earth station was ready. The Concorde arrived in full force, a massive fleet moving in patterns that seemed designed to intimidate. The Vurek and humans watched as the ships approached, their massive hulls blotting out the stars. Yet, instead of panicking, Karen took a deep breath and prepared to speak. The human diplomats had arranged a live communication channel, open to the entire fleet. This was their chance to appeal to reason, to show that the Vurek and humans were not enemies, and that force would not achieve the outcome the Concorde desired. Karen's voice, calm and authoritative, carried over the communication channel. "We have been cast out by the galaxy," she said. "We have sought refuge on Earth, and the humans here have welcomed us not out of fear, but out of compassion. We do not seek conflict. We do not seek power. We seek life, peace, and the chance to contribute, not to dominate. We ask you to reconsider your judgment. Violence will only bring loss to all sides." There was silence from the Concorde. The fleet paused as if weighing the words. Karen continued. "Look at Earth and her people. Look at the cooperation between our species. We are stronger together because we are united by more than survival. We are united by trust, respect, and compassion. We invite you to see the strength that comes from choice, not fear." The response was unexpected. A Concorde commander spoke, questioning Karen and the humans. "Do you truly believe your unity can withstand the galaxy's authority? Your alliance is untested. You risk everything by defying us." Karen replied without hesitation, "We do not defy out of arrogance. We act out of necessity, and we act with conviction. Strength is not only measured by weapons or fleets. Strength is measured by the courage to protect life, the wisdom to seek peace, and the trust to work together. You will find that underestimating us will cost more than you expect." The Concorde commander was silent again. Karen could sense tension in the fleet, the first crack in their imposing armor. She signaled the humans to continue monitoring communications, while the Vurek prepared defensive formations. Both species remained vigilant, ready for conflict, but determined that words and reason should come first. Over the next few hours, small skirmishes occurred at the edges of the fleet. Concorde ships tested the defenses, but humans and Vurek responded in perfect coordination. Shields held, ships maneuvered, and energy pulses were calculated precisely. Every action reinforced the message. This alliance was not weak, and it would not be intimidated. Karen remained calm, guiding her people with quiet authority. Fear was present, yes, but it was transformed into focus and determination. As the day passed, a turning point arrived. The Concorde fleet, observing the combined strength and coordination of Earth and Vurek forces, began to hesitate. Karen seized the opportunity. She sent a final message, clear and resolute. "We do not wish to fight, but we will defend ourselves, our friends, and this planet. Recognize our right to live, and we will continue to seek peace. Refuse, and the cost will be greater than you anticipate." The silence that followed was heavy. Karen felt the weight of every life dependent on this moment. Humans waited with quiet anticipation, their hands steady on controls, eyes focused. The Vurek stood ready, disciplined and united. For hours, nothing happened. Then slowly the Concorde commander responded. Their tone was cautious, neutral, and careful. "We acknowledge your strength and the unity of your people. We will reconsider our orders. Violence is not desired, but our position remains. You have been noted." It was a victory of words, strategy, and courage. There had been no major destruction, no loss of life, and yet the galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans and Vurek standing together, not just in survival, but in wisdom, strength, and conviction. Karen allowed herself a moment to breathe. She knew the conquered would not disappear, and that challenges would continue, but for now peace had been preserved. The aftermath was both quiet and transformative. Humans and Vurek worked together to repair minor damage, strengthen alliances, and prepare for the future. The success of the communication and defense effort inspired trust, respect, and admiration on both sides. Humans realized that their courage and ingenuity had earned them allies across the stars, and the Vurek recognized that Earth was more than a refuge. It was a home worth protecting. Karen walked among her people and the humans, observing small gestures that showed the depth of their bond. Children played side by side, sharing toys and games. Engineers discussed designs for new ships and energy devices. Scientists exchanged notes on medicine, biology, and technology. It was a world of collaboration, trust, and shared purpose. At night, Karen stood looking at Earth from the observation deck. The planet glowed like a jewel, beautiful, vibrant, and alive. She thought of the journey that had brought her people here, from exile, fear, and rejection to hope, belonging, and courage. The galaxy had once turned them away, and yet here, on this small blue planet, they had found strength, friendship, and the chance to build a future. The lesson was clear. Power alone did not determine survival. Wisdom, unity, and compassion were just as important. Humans had taught the Vurek about courage in adversity, about adaptability, and about the strength that came from working together. The Vurek had taught humans precision, discipline, and knowledge of the stars. Together, they had created something far greater than the sum of their parts. Karen allowed herself to imagine the future. She envisioned a time when the Vurek would not only survive but thrive on Earth, contributing to its growth and learning from it in return. She imagined a galaxy where species could cooperate, respect one another, and find strength in unity rather than dominance. The conquered would continue to be a challenge, but the lesson of this day was clear. Fear could be met with courage, and force could be met with strategy, wisdom, and compassion. As she turned to walk among her people, Karen felt a sense of profound hope. The Vurek had arrived on Earth as exiles, uncertain and fragile. They had faced threats from the galaxy, learned to trust humans, and discovered a new way to live. Now they were not just survivors, they were participants in a larger story, a story of courage, unity, and hope. And in that story, every human in Vurek would have a place. The galaxy would remember this day, not as a defeat or surrender, but as a moment when understanding, diplomacy, and courage reshaped the path of exiles and strangers alike. Earth had proved. After the confrontation with the conquered, life on Earth slowly returned to a new kind of normal. The Vurek were no longer merely refugees. They were residents, contributors, and partners in a shared future. Yet Karen Thal knew that peace was never permanent, and the galaxy would continue to challenge them. Still, there was something different now. Confidence, unity, and hope that had been missing for decades. The humans and Vurek worked together to repair and improve the Earth station. The minor damages from the Concord skirmish were fixed quickly, but more importantly, they strengthened systems, upgraded shields, and created redundancies for safety. Engineers from both species exchanged knowledge freely. Humans taught the Vurek practical, hands-on solutions for maintenance and repair, while the Vurek introduced techniques that had been developed over centuries in space. The blending of skills made both stronger and more capable. Children were the first to truly feel the freedom of this new era. Human and Vurek youth played together in training grounds, learning both cooperation and individual skills. They raced through obstacle courses, learned basic defense techniques, and studied maps of the stars. But they also laughed, sang, and shared stories in ways that reminded everyone of the joy that had brought the Vurek to Earth in the first place. It was a kind of education that went beyond books and simulations. It taught resilience, friendship, and understanding. Karen often walked among these children, observing quietly. She saw something remarkable, a generation of beings, human and Vurek, who would grow up without the constant fear of exile or rejection. They had learned from each other that life was not just about survival. It was about courage, compassion, and the willingness to work together even when danger loomed. For Karen, this was a moment of triumph she had never imagined possible. The adults also adapted quickly. Humans and Vurek began joint projects that expanded Earth's capacity for defense, research, and exploration. Renewable energy systems were upgraded with Vurek efficiency techniques, creating power grids that could withstand disasters. Medical knowledge shared by both species improved healthcare for humans and Vurek alike. Small laboratories became hubs of learning, innovation, and discovery. People from both worlds discovered that cooperation not only solved problems, it created opportunities they could never have imagined alone. Diplomacy with the conquered continued quietly. Karen sent regular communications not as a show of weakness but as a reminder that the Vurek had friends and that Earth's people would not abandon them. The galaxy's response gradually softened. The conquered began to acknowledge that the Vurek had found a place where they could thrive without threatening others. In private messages, commanders expressed surprise at the strength of cooperation between humans and aliens, realizing that brute force alone would not control a species united in purpose and trust. With the immediate threat diminished, cultural exchange flourished. Vurek elders taught humans techniques for meditation, balance, and focus that improved daily life and decision-making. Humans introduced art, music, and literature that inspired the Vurek to explore creativity they had long forgotten. Together, they built schools, workshops, and creative spaces where both species could learn and grow. Every new skill, every shared experience strengthened bonds that had formed under pressure and fear. Karen encouraged her people to embrace Earth as their home fully. "We were welcomed here not just to survive but to live," she told them. "Every moment is a chance to learn, to teach, and to show that we are more than exiles. Together we will build a legacy that neither the galaxy nor our past can take away." The Vurek listened, inspired by her words, and began contributing in ways both practical and meaningful. Some worked on defense systems, others on scientific research, and some focused on teaching and guiding the younger generation. Humans, in turn, began to appreciate the Vurek in ways beyond utility. They saw bravery, wisdom, and honor in their new allies. The Vurek's stories of survival, exile, and resilience became lessons for humans, showing the power of perseverance and trust. Both species discovered that true strength was not in domination or conquest, but in the courage to live with integrity and the willingness to help others. Trade and technology exchange expanded as well. Vurek knowledge of faster-than-light travel, energy systems, and long-range sensors allowed humans to explore space in ways they had never attempted. In return, humans shared advanced medicine, environmental solutions, and strategies for urban development. Together, they laid the foundation for a society that combined the best of both worlds: ingenuity, compassion, discipline, and adaptability. Life in the station and across Earth became more harmonious. Small communities formed where humans and Vurek lived and worked together seamlessly. Festivals celebrated unity and friendship, combining music, food, and stories from both species. These events were not just entertainment, they were reminders that cooperation and understanding created strength beyond technology or numbers. Karen often thought about the galaxy beyond Earth. She knew the conquered still existed, and other powers watched closely, curious about the alliance that had resisted and survived. But she also knew something important. Strength was no longer measured solely in ships or weapons. Humans and Vurek had built something enduring: trust, courage, and the proof that beings from different worlds could thrive together. A small incident in one of the training zones illustrated the depth of this bond. A young human child tripped near a Vurek workshop, and a Vurek youth immediately reached out, steadying the child. No words were needed, just an instinctive act of care. Nearby adults smiled quietly, recognizing that the lessons of survival and cooperation had been internalized by the next generation. Simple acts like this were proof that the alliance was more than strategy or necessity. It was family. Karen watched these moments with pride. The galaxy had banished her people, forcing them into exile. Yet here on a distant planet they had not only survived, they had flourished. They had discovered that life could be more than duty and survival. It could be choice, love, friendship, and shared purpose. The Vurek had learned humility and trust, and humans had learned courage and resilience in ways they could never have imagined. Exploration became the next step. With conquered attention waning, humans and Vurek began joint missions into nearby star systems. They mapped planets, collected samples, and observed civilizations, learning about the universe together. Every mission reinforced the lessons of Earth. That cooperation, trust, and shared knowledge created possibilities beyond imagination. The Vurek, once exiles, were now pioneers alongside humans, contributing to discovery and understanding in ways that bridged species and cultures. Karen made a point of teaching diplomacy as much as defense. She arranged meetings with other alien species, showing that humans and Vurek could coexist peacefully and productively. Their combined example impressed other civilizations, proving that unity could be more powerful than intimidation or conquest. Slowly, word spread through the galaxy. Earth was a place of refuge, innovation, and hope, and the Vurek were living proof of what could happen when trust and compassion guided actions. Even in private moments, Karen reflected on the journey. She remembered the fear of exile, the uncertainty of leaving their home worlds, and the cold rejection from the galaxy. She remembered the first days on Earth when every step felt strange and every interaction uncertain. Now she saw a people transformed. The Vurek had learned courage, cooperation, and the joy of life beyond survival. Humans had gained allies, teachers, and friends. Together they had forged something permanent, meaningful, and resilient. Karen addressed a gathering of both humans and Vurek as the sun rose over Earth. "We were cast out by the galaxy," she said, voice carrying through the hall. "We were uncertain, frightened, and alone, but we found a place that offered hope, friendship, and purpose. We have learned that true strength is not just in technology or numbers, it is in courage, trust, and compassion. Today we are no longer exiles. Today we are a family, a community, and a force for life and understanding. The galaxy will remember this, not because of war, but because of what we have created together." The crowd, a mixture of humans and Vurek, erupted in quiet applause and smiles. Children laughed, elders nodded, and everyone felt the weight of what had been achieved. Earth had not just given refuge, it had given purpose. And in that purpose, the Vurek had discovered hope, identity, and a future worth fighting for. Karen looked up at the stars, imagining the galaxy beyond. She knew there would always be challenges, always be threats, but she also knew that the lesson of Earth was clear. Unity, trust, and courage were more powerful than fear, exile, or even overwhelming force. The Vurek were no longer merely survivors, they were citizens of a new era, partners with humans in shaping a future where life, friendship, and understanding mattered most. As the sun set over oceans and forests, Karen felt a quiet joy. The journey had been long and dangerous, but it had brought them here, to a place of hope, growth, and possibility. The Vurek had learned to live fully, to trust, to teach, and to be inspired.